Hello, everyone. Really excited to talk to you today. We are in the middle of PTSD Awareness Month, following an amazing month with EDS awareness, and so these themes are just rolling together and continuing. Today I'm going to share a little bit more of my personal journey as a launch pad for sharing some bigger resources around how you can begin to direct the effort of recovery and stability in PTSD and trauma in some directions that might really surprise you. We are so used to over efforting. For years, I remember struggling with my body and my mind and wrestling with reactions and triggers and not knowing what they were and why, and then remembering and knowing where they came from and feeling this deep sense of depression and helplessness around my body and my mind. Is this all I'll ever be? Is this the these emotions, constant anger, depression, is this what my life is going to be like? And fortunately, the answer is no. It definitely doesn't have to be that way. And while the big picture is undeniably complex and complicated, I'm not coming to you here saying that I know your story. I'm going to just share with you mine. And hopefully, some of these things will resonate and speak to you and maybe open some doors that can be effective in your life. So, this first work that I encountered, and if you go Google it, you're going to find out that Dr. James Wilder is a Christian and that his development of these techniques came from his faith. And that's a connection that I had in finding them in the first place. But I really want to encourage you to bear with me and to bear with the sense of the process, because while his faith certainly spiritually informed a lot of his work, it lines up with what we are now knowing about polyvagal systems, somatic experiencing, and PTSD recovery in very remarkable ways. And he was working with those systems, not those words, but those systems long before this began to gain mainstream attention, especially in post-pandemic, as more and more people just sort of flooded the systems needing therapy and needing help recovering from a variety of trauma. So the fundamental gist of James Wilder's work is that by intentionally giving and receiving joy to others, you are able to develop habits that repair neural pathways that have been damaged, that are not trauma-based, and to recover relational circuitry, to maintain the circuitry in the face of triggers and keeping people around you feeling real and safe versus threatening to your system, and returning to joy from any situation in less than 2 minutes, which is how fast the body is actually able to recover from a wide variety of triggers. It's really still blows my mind how quickly one can bounce back, so to speak, from this. So for me, in my story, I was introduced to this for 10 years ago now by a teacher trainer in the context of some family support systems. And I had been struggling for many years as a child sexual abuse survivor, and the perpetrator was someone that we were around for years, sometimes on a daily basis. And the sociopathy also led to deeply ingrained dysfunctional communication patterns within our family unit, as well as the ongoing emotional and psychological abuse from this person. Um, and so you toss in a little autism, because that's definitely part of my neurobiology, sorting through and problem solving all of this, and then a little EDS on the side because, hey, connective tissue disorders just make life a little more interesting. And you get a lot of young people who are legitimately a bit of a mess. It definitely was. Um, and it is such a joy now to be able to connect with other little messes who are in that place and actually welcome them in and give them a safe place to be, because this work grounded a set of life-changing techniques and habits and processes for me that that did all of these things, that created new neural pathways that were non-trauma based, that healed old ones. And so as we go into kind of sharing a little bit with my story about how this began to happen for me and work through with me, I do want to say that I'm not approaching this as, hey, this is a cure. I don't really like that word for cures. Anger, pain, sadness, these are things that try to destroy our lives, but can also enhance them and give us a contrast to the joy that we really need. And I don't just mean happiness, I mean the joy in the pure sense of feeling that you are delighted in and loving yourself. Not just a mantra of saying it, but truly feeling that that's how you feel about yourself. Um, and so this isn't a set of videos and talks and resources over the next few days to say this is going to cure you. Because if you do that, everyone puts way too much effort into it also. And the fundamental part of this, and adding the joy in, the foundation of this is not effort. It's the absence of effort. It is effortless because your body changes and attaches and grows in ways that it couldn't before. So the concept of being able to return to joy, to be able to not be triggered and then struggling with the emotional weight of that circuitry and the threat responses around and the emotional management, this was completely new to me and wonderful. Within the first couple weeks of the training, I had two very significant and profound opportunities with this coach where he walked me through what you would now today call grounding exercises that during the intense emotional triggers related to the trauma, uh, this was utterly life-changing. Not because I instantly knew what to do for myself, but because in those moments with that teacher trainer, I was still sad. I was still scared, but I also felt grounded and a sense in my body that you might call it a sense of peace, but there was a piece of myself that came out of it going, oh, you're going to be okay and you feel okay. Wow. So sadness can be there at the same time. Fear can exist at the same time as actually knowing and feeling that I'm going to be okay. Whoa. And so a part of my body was able to return to a sense of being that I had never been able to accomplish before in many years of effort and attempting and trying. And that's what life had been like with PTSD. Constantly efforting all of the overwhelmed, significant hypersensory symptoms. It was already twitchy, as I mentioned, and so just adding in PTSD to autism and chronic health issues, it's not a mountain to climb, it's the Mariana Trench. It's not happening. But these two experiences changed my life. My entire body learned in those two experiences and then many others that followed. It learned that it was actually possible to become grounded and possible to do that without having to verbally rehash all of the issues and problems. That's usually what talk therapy does, and it leads to an increased state of hyperarousal and awareness because you're spending all of your time remembering the trauma, not remembering safety or remembering joy and remembering other key emotions. Love is a tricky word to have as a trigger because that one gets used by abusers. So we like to stay with words like safety. And so in the aggravated states of arousal, you have to put in a huge amount of effort to then govern the arousal somehow. And it's top down, where your mind is trying to make your body do something, and this really doesn't work. And instead of that, I discovered that I could use my body to communicate to my mind that it was okay. So here's how this happens. And I just ate this stuff up for the months and years following. Joy skills have a set of fundamental practices that you work into everyday life, and they're centered around the giving and receiving of appreciation from others. The appreciation must be detailed. It has to go beyond a single compliment to another person, like, oh, that's a lovely hat. and you did a great job on that paper. Has to go beyond the compliments, because you're drawing the other person through appreciation into a sensory experience. Have you ever done the grounding techniques where you go outside and you do like 5 things you can see, 3 things you can touch, 4 things you can hear? Um, Different combinations of numbers, but it's a multi-sensory experience, and it's a grounding technique. It's like that, but you're giving it to another person. And it's not just about nature around them, it's about who they are as a person and about their fundamental core identity. So when you come into this space, you have to be able to notice other people. Um, if you would go back in the series on my YouTube channel, the EDS at EDS Advocate, I posted a video this week about what we need in emotional distress is to be reminded of who we are. And that comes from this work. That through appreciation, we have tools for giving those reminders to other people, um, and reminding them of the deep core parts of them that are not suffering, that are not altered and changed by what they're going through. This is who you are. And so that actually requires that you notice and spend time with people. You have to pay attention to who they are, not just their negative traits and qualities, not just the things that drive you crazy and annoy you. It makes you really study other people, and have to do that in also a very positive light to find the joy. So you build a set of daily practices around this, around appreciation, and it brings these detailed, rich, vibrant appreciation into someone's life. And it has this amazing reciprocal effect where, as you are telling someone, giving them this appreciation, it fills you with this deep sense of vulnerability and attachment and joy, even if they don't give it back to you, which hopefully they do. That's the second step, is if you're working with a partner, they give it back to you. And then so I did this with the kids, trying to bring it into my marriage, with friends especially. Oh my gosh, I started doing this with students, college students, high school students, and found incredible shifting in emotions away from all that effort that I talked about, that was my life experience for so long, and into this incredible place that you just have to call peace. And the amazing thing is the other person, it begins to be at peace with you. Is there more synchronized attachment than that? I don't think so. I haven't found it yet. There is not something that is more emotionally synchronizing and attaching through the whole body than becoming at peace with another person and experiencing joy together. So I began to do this all the time, and I found that I could also use it with my family. And for the first time in years, it could bypass so much of our interwoven dysfunctional triggers, and create these small bubbles of positivity and safety with each other. And that's life changing. It may be years and years of doing that before more relationships can grow, especially when you've experienced trauma together for prolonged periods from a shared abuser. But it gives you something you can say and can do. And anyone who knows what I'm talking about knows the pitfalls of family communication when everyone's kind of hurt and dysfunctional and struggling, and you want to move beyond the judgmental criticism, and there's just no way how. Well, sharing appreciation about little things. In Aikido, we call it getting off the line of attack. You sidestep. When someone's coming in with the energy, instead of pushing back against it, you let it happen and use their energy to roll forward. And while abusers, narcissists, and others do that to cause pain and injury, joy skills, because it's just so effective, joy skills take the energy as it's coming in and turn it into something good and beautiful, and redirect depression and anxiety and negativity Family members are the hardest to do that with because there's higher expectations. But get yourself out with some strangers, your students, other people, and it's just a remarkable process. Um, and so when you give the appreciation, here's how that works: is you're sitting with someone, and it usually requires eye contact. Mm-hmm. Can do it with the camera now, because your eyes are a part of emotional synchronization. And I found that with practicing joy skills, my ability to make eye contact with other people drastically improved. It was life changing also as an autistic woman because I began to understand just how much emotion and energy from another person comes through connecting vision. From looking, even from across a room, the two brains can begin to synchronize together and oscillate together through eye contact. No wonder autistic people don't make eye contact. That's a lot of emotion to navigate. And so my usual experience was that trying to make eye contact with people would just flood me. Because our most instinctual level of empathy, not level, our most instinctual type of empathy is something called mirror empathy. And that's where we feel what the other person is feeling as though we are that person. We don't just notice what they're feeling and relate to what they're feeling, we're feeling it instantly and with so much force and so much energy that we it's just as hard to articulate as that person is having a hard time articulating what they're feeling. um, so no wonder autistic people avoid this. So when we have to avoid eye contact because of emotional overwhelm, it also creates a lifelong pattern of not being able to synchronize and attach with other people the way that most of you watching this do. And you take it for granted. You don't even know that it's part of your daily life. But from the time you were an infant, your ability to make eye contact with the people around you fed a part of your identity and your development. And autistic people generally do not get anywhere near that same amount, and sometimes hardly any. Just to keep that in mind. Um, and but with using the joy skills and using this practice and coming to that place with another person, I found that for the purpose of giving them this love and this joy through these beautiful, rich descriptions of who they are as a person, that appreciation, that the intensity of the exchange wasn't as overwhelming. It stays powerful, but not flooding. And over time, as my brain began to practice doing this, it became easier and easier to make eye contact with people. And it wasn't because of more effort. The mirror empathy is still there. But for the first time, possibly in my life, I think I would call it control. My brain began working on my behalf without me having to put any effort at all into the exchanges, um, receiving that instantaneous rush of emotions from the eye contact and modulating it. It was amazing. This must be what other people experience naturally and all the time. So, my fellow Aspies, not just because this has happened with me, but it's something that your brain can learn. You might learn it to different degrees and with different levels of success, but your brain can learn to synchronize and to manage those exchanges. It's life changing. So now at this point in the story, I'm only really a couple months into these new techniques and practicing them, but my life has just been forever changed. And imagine, especially my autistic people out there, how often you have to experience hypersensitivity triggers around PTSD, or just because of social dynamics and social environmental triggers, and then almost overnight, cut that reactivity in half. Imagine life with 50% less of that. And the capacity that that would leave, the spoons that would become available to you. And you haven't had to put a whole bunch of effort into it. Your body's just not reacting to things. And so the next step is getting to build stamina, which is where I bring in the second technique that really changed my life. You're going to see I did think about a lot of this ahead of time, and I kind of wrote some notes, which I have in front of me to keep me on track on this passionate topic. So engaging up here, engaging down here, getting some visual breaks from the camera as we go. So I know it's not kosher, but oh well. So Dr. Wilder calls this second technique joy memories, the power of memory. It's a part of the grounding process that the teacher trainer took me through during those two very big triggers that I mentioned. Very, very gently, you cue the person you are with as though you are body doubling with them to think of something that is a memory that is safe. So the relationship in this moment is not a clinical therapeutic one. It might need to become that for a person. They may need professional help because the brain can come up with so many different roadblocks to memory and remembering. I'm very, very much aware of that, as I will share. But for the moment, all we're talking about is this kind of thing that you can do with a friend, and that you might even see a lot of neurotypical people seem to do when they sit with each other and exchange empathy about an issue. But this is much more intentional, and it actually can speak to connection and synchronicity in a way that reaches neurodivergent individuals as well, where the other methods don't. So you are body doubling with the person, or being body doubled with, in your trauma. So you're not alone. You're not isolated. You go into it with them, with their pain and with their fear, and you're going to body double them through it using memory. So you cue the person that you're body doubling for to quietly search in their mind for a memory of time in life when they felt safe. And the words here are key because some words can be very, very triggering. I mentioned like love, because abusers can use that. But the word safety, words like safety and delight are very sensory and rich, and usually very positive. So safety is more universal and universally good. And so with this prompt, the person who's being triggered is taking time to focus on their breathing and to begin to find a memory of when they felt safe. When you're in this moment, you have to let your body go and to trust the person who's body doubling with you. That is not always an instantaneous connection or ability, especially when severe cases of abuse or when it's very, very recent. And so someone in that case also may need more time and be very gradual. So don't think of this as in a measure of being successful or not successful. There is a point when you, as the person who's been through the trauma, will be ready to let your body go to that place of safety and to remember it. And that happens in its own time. And for me, it was in these moments, not just because I trusted the person who was guiding me, really didn't know him very well, but I was desperate for something different, and I knew it could be possible, and so I made a choice. And it was one of the best choices I made. And as he guided me through finding a memory of safety, and I recalled something, and he began to help me find sensory components to that safety. He was mentioning, saying, what do you see? What do you taste? What do you hear? Just like with appreciation, but in even more depth, just like in the grounding exercises where you go out into nature and notice what you can touch and what you can taste, and you really notice it. Like you feel, you don't just touch the tree, you feel the texture of the bark. You don't just look at the different shades of green on the leaves, you examine them. And so the person who's body doubling helps to guide you through a very, very texture rich experience of your own memory of safety. And it redirects the mind and the body away from the trigger into a place of remembered peace, even. And when you're in this place, your body just, it goes through this translation of shifting in space and time, where you're reliving something so different from the trauma and your typical library of PTSD flashbacks. I never knew my body could do that before. So many of the memories are just filled with sadness and pain. And I remember during a deep season of depression in high school, where I had the distinct thoughts that I would never be able to remember the good parts of my childhood. And I knew they were there. I knew I had gone through them, but anytime I tried to remember them, they would be completely flooded by all of the bad. And that made me very sad, very disconnected. And so, in a way, my body was very, very ready for this kind of guided memory work, because I had already had 10 years of realizing that I needed to remember things differently, just not knowing how. So the tools that I had involved before were so much effort, and were so easily derailed. You'd get to maybe a place of peace and comfort, but then as soon as you try to talk to a person again, or go back to work, or engage, everything just sort of falls apart, and you feel like a failure. You feel like it's your fault. You should be able to control it and do better. Um, and you can't. Not in that way. And this, I will go on a slight rabbit trail here from my notes, because in life, especially in trauma recovery, the people that tend to be the least aware of your growth and change are the ones who claim to be the closest to you. They become so convinced of your behavior patterns and your speech patterns, and um, your own sharing of your trauma, if you've been open over time, that they feel that they know you, and they cannot process that you could possibly actually be different. And it can create this very painful juxtaposition where the people in your family or your closer circles sort of rewrite your character, where they keep you here when you're actually going off over here, becoming, and they're stuck on who you were, because they've had to put so much effort into that relationship. Which is sad. They need the joy skills too. So if you're supporting people through trauma, guess what? You also need all these joy skills, because your own attachment pain and your own health issues and neurodivergence and all these other different pieces, they are drastically affecting your ability to support or not support other people's recovery. And if you ignore that and decide that you just have it all together and you're really good at it, I feel very sorry for you. But for the rest of you, that will happen. People will do that. Don't let that derail you. Don't let that change, even to the point where they think you're even cutting them off, because you are living life differently and not going along with the same dysfunctional communication patterns that they're used to, that have become a pseudo-safety connection for them. And that's going to feel to them like you are rejecting them. That is not your responsibility. More on that down the road. Okay, but for now, for here, for this moment, of what it means to have joy skills, to build joy memories, this is life-changing work. Most of you at this point in time in 2025 have been exposed to concepts of polyvagal theory and somatic experiencing. So what I'm describing may not be unfamiliar to you at all, but this was happening, this was techniques that I encountered 10 years ago, and then were being worked on even 10 years before that. This was not mainstream. This was not common knowledge and common values. This, you wouldn't just run into this, let alone inside of faith communities, where there's an expectation of recovery that often is not achievable with the methods that are given. So this is quite a drastic shift for me in my life. And as a parent with my children, to return to joy with them, and to share that and keep that grounded place of recovery in the midst of their difficult emotions. Difficult. I don't mean that in a like, oh, she's so difficult. I mean, when you experience a new emotion for the first time, or you're experiencing them very strongly, they are difficult. You haven't had practice with it. You don't know how to do it, like braiding your hair, correctly washing dishes. You just haven't done it before. And so, as a parent who is trying to recover from trauma, and living with PTSD, recover from trauma, health issues, all those other things, one of the places that becomes the most painful for us is our struggle with regulation with our children, because they need us to be able to enter into that emotional space with them and body double through the emotions, and we can't, because our own anger and our own pain, we don't even know how to do that in ourselves, let alone give it to someone else. And this was also completely life-changing, because for the first time with my children, it didn't matter whether I had healed and fully recovered from PTSD. I had a tool that I could employ in the moment with them wholly and completely to return to joy no matter how I was feeling. And I often felt better afterwards also. So I can't underappreciate the impact of that. So you have different techniques. You've got giving and receiving appreciation, which can take the form of verbal exchanges, written letters, notes, recordings. You have body doubling through joy memories, or even taking yourself through a joy memory. And then the third set of techniques, which were not unique to just Dr. Wilder's work, but being pulled directly from the growing awareness of somatic work with the body, is he would incorporate patterns of breathing, tapping into the body, stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, sometimes with a verbal mantra that was meaningful to you as a person or to your faith. And they reset the sympathetic nervous system. This was a whole other just wow moment for me. Like, oh my gosh, did my body just do that? And I also immediately began doing that with my children. My very small children, I could turn them and I could hold them to me, and we could breathe. And their states of hyperarousal could calm and could settle. I didn't know my son was autistic. I didn't know my daughter was ADHD. And these kinds of tools for parenting, uh, even now, barely exist. But we were able to engage in that, to make eye contact, to use appreciation, to keep our relational circuits on with each other, and to calm from those states of hyperarousal. And it was just incredible in bonding and building this habitat of safety in our home and in our lives. And that also became a part of my healing journey. Instead of having to somehow be fixed as a parent before I could parent, I was able to grow and heal while being a mom. And that was just incredible. And over time, as other people, a few other people began to join me in that journey, we could grow together in other ways. A couple of whom, and one of whom is just a very, very close friend of mine, and I'm sure we will be very connected for the rest of our lives. So this one summer, which was about 2016, so drastically and radically changed the course of my life, and it sparked just a huge passion for being here, for doing what I do now, working with people, and was so pivotal in not only how I've gotten here today and the choices that I've made, but the ones that I will make the rest of my life going forward. As we are learning in the chronic illness community and the psychological world of trauma recovery, and as I'm going to share over the next few days, some pieces about polyvagal theory, somatic experiencing, and other approaches for life and recovery from PTSD. These things actually work. I was taught, not just through experience as a child and with a few different therapists, but in school, I was taught that there was really no way to recover from PTSD. You know, Maslow has self-actualization pieces, and you've got some really incredible trauma work from Viktor Frankl. But all of these systems, even the Jungian archetypes, struggle with a basic piece, and that is the ability of the body to return to joy through synchronizing with other human beings. And that's why I had to start today with sharing this piece. Because our bodies do develop scar tissue. But did you know that even scar tissue can be treated? That all of that ripped and torn up fascia and layers of skin that bind up and knot, that when you treat them with excessive gentleness, not breaking it apart, but gentleness, it can soften and begin to reintegrate the fibers back into the fascia web of your body and your skin, because they can. That's a whole other technique, Sharon Wheeler's scar work, but it perfectly parallels with what I'm talking about PTSD, secondary PTSD, and recovery from forms of trauma. We try to break through it and look for breakthrough. And actually what it needs is very, very gentle things that you can do every day in little bits and pieces that are effortless. And the trauma of our lives begins to simply become a part of who we are, not the defining feature. Just a piece of the story, of the narrative. And that's what I was experiencing through this incredible work, and have continued to experience over the following 10 years. I can't wait to keep experiencing it. But on this page in my feed over the next few days, I'm going to share some more resources, some of the things that I've mentioned in this talk, and tips for how you can access them on your own, and access clinical providers and professionals as well who are experienced in these things and can help you. How you can choose for yourself to move beyond the trauma and the life of being a victim and actually affect change in your body for the better. The things I've talked about today, sharing that kind of appreciation, guiding through joy memories. I wish I could spend hours showing you more and introduce you to some of the amazing people that I've gotten to work with, because they're brilliant at it. It's been 10 years, but I'm a baby. I'm a baby in this work. There's so much more you can learn and to do, and but you need to know that you don't have to be fixed to help people. You don't have to be fixed to be with them in their pain. You just have to not put so much effort into it. It's about learning to be yourself, learning to be able to stay at peace and be who you are, and not be derailed by other people's trauma and emotions. And that is no small feat. I promise you. I do not say that lightly or with some inflated sense of my own skill. There is a constant need to refresh and relearn, especially with some of the people who might be closer to you and related. So I will close with this, because this is one of the most profound pieces of vulnerability I have ever heard. It came from my son. He's now 13. But this is actually a couple of years ago when he said this. We were talking about change. It was in one of our school discussions that went a bit more towards psychology and people interests, because that's what we do. And they were thinking through some of their interactions with kids in the neighborhood and trying to juggle their own autistic sensory triggers along with things they were noticing in the kids. We don't know what their triggers were, if there was neurodivergent things or other trauma involved, but there was a lot of upheaval emotionally during some of the playtimes. So the kids were talking about this and talking about change. And I ended up saying quite a few things really, really passionately about how the joy skills that we were practicing had this amazing ability to return to joy out of conflict and to change us, to grow and mature us, etc., etc. And what he latched onto was the word change. And he began to get very emotional and started to cry. And he said, Mom, in my little sweet boy, he says, Mom, I don't want to change. I want to be myself. And my heart broke in this incredibly painful juxtaposition of poignant beauty and deep sentiment. It was one of the most beautiful moments of breaking I think I have ever felt. Um, because after years of all of this work and judgment and criticism and years of people around me unable to notice change and growth and stuck in their own patterns and moving on from that and creating a new life and a better life. Um, a child saying, I want to stay myself. When trauma and PTSD hit your life, they unself you in negative ways. Uh, so I went up to him, and I forget, I don't know if I touched his hands. He also autistic, so I wasn't rushing into his space. I was coming up and sort of just inviting him into mine, and I grabbed his hands and I looked at him in the eyes and I said, I'm not talking about the kind of change that changes who you are. This is the kind of change that protects who you are and helps you become who you are more than you've ever been before. Recovering in life with PTSD is about becoming yourself again. And you can choose to begin that today. It doesn't have to wait. It's not dependent on other people. It's about you. If you're going to treat your body differently and truly love yourself by giving it joy and safety, and then giving it time. It's about becoming who you are more than you've ever been before. Keep an eye on our page over the next few days, and we'll give you some more tools about how to begin that journey.